Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Miss Camay Show. I am your host, Miss Camay, coming to you live from the fabulous entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. My guest today is Amy Johnson. She is a paralegal. She owns her own company out in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm getting a little tongue-tied when I say that. And Amy has agreed to join me today. We are premiering this interview of this amazing, talented, successful paralegal in support of Local Vegas Legal Support here in Las Vegas. Local Vegas Legal Support is a nonprofit, and the mission of the nonprofit is to provide tools and resources to other paralegals across the country to help them be a better legal professional. And who better to launch that platform and that interview today but Amy Johnson herself. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ms. Camay. I'm super excited to be here. I am so glad that you asked me.
Thank you. Well, you are quite the accomplished paralegal. I thought I was doing a lot in my 20-year tenure here, but looking at your LinkedIn profile and going through your resume, you are quite accomplished. You are the owner of the Angle Solutions in Charleston, South Carolina. That is you provide strategic education-oriented professional, you are a strategic, educated-oriented professional with a passion for exceeding expectations and helping others achieve their best results. You have a strong background in the legal industry and a history of success in developing and implementing highly successful programs, processes, and events to drive employee and organizational success. You identify and analyze and execute best practices. You work collaboratively, which is very important in the legal support field. And you promote enhanced employee performance at all levels in multiple functional areas. So let's start with this. How did you become a paralegal? Where did it all start for you?
Okay, so we're gonna go way back because like you, I have been a paralegal more than 20 years. And so, but I started actually as a high school economics teacher. And so when I went to college, I studied history. I was a history major and social studies education. And I actually taught school in Jacksonville, Florida. And I coached the girls' golf team. And one of the dads on the golf team was an attorney. Okay. And he said, I need someone to do economic analysis at my law firm. And do you have a summer job? I said, no, I don't have a summer job yet. I was going to go wait tables at the beach. He said, I'll pay you more than you would make waiting tables. And so back to 22-year-old me, that was all it took. Like, okay, I mean, I don't know what it is to work at a law firm. Like a lot of paralegals out there, it was not my dream growing up. I didn't even know what a paralegal was growing up. But I went, I worked, I reviewed his files, and my job was basically to pull out the numbers, and whether that was medical bills or costs in the case, and then really just analyze, is it effective to keep moving forward with this case?
Okay, I see.
Which sounds really abstract to me saying it now, but that's what my job was. And so I would report to him and he would take that and move forward with it. But the great thing is that when I worked there, I was exposed to other paralegal work. And so I started doing other research. I started, they had a case about automatic garage door openers or automatic sunroofs or morphine pumps. And so then the additional work I was tasked with was to do research on those products. Okay. And I loved it. And this was before, let me tell you, I can remember we had to pay per minute for the internet, right? So I would have to like write out all my queries and then go to the little library. I mean, I'm seriously telling you how old I am right now. We had to pay per minute. And so I remember it was a really big deal when we got internet at our desks. So that was that. And I've been doing it ever since. I did do a brief stint as a casualty adjuster, an injury adjuster for a national insurance company. Okay. Which I really think, first of all, gave me such an appreciation for how the other side views cases, because aside from that, my work has all been plaintiff's work, how the other side views cases, and really, really strengthened my ability to look at medical records quickly and efficiently. And so I think that really everything that I have done, the jobs that I've had, throughout my career have really, if you just try to take kind of what's best from them and grow from it. But it has been a very rewarding career for me, which has brought me to where I am now, where that, like you also, I want to really give back, and I want to help encourage the next generation of paralegals. How did we get to where we are? How did that, changes that we've seen in the paralegal field, and how do you roll with those changes? How do you draw success from them, even not just navigate them, but actually leverage them?
Yes.
So.
Good point. Such a good point. So, a big topic of conversation, especially in our current administration, is, student loan debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there are now, paralegal programs across, the country at various universities. There are online platforms provided as well. Our educational system has grown so much. And so I, very strategically and with intent, got into the paralegal industry. And I went to college, and I have a paralegal degree. I actually have 2 degrees. But there are many, many, many paralegals who never went to college, who never had any kind of formal training at all, ended up in the industry and have gone on to be very successful without any formal education. For me, my practical experience, my professional legal experience helped me be a stellar student in college, because I was able to really understand what I was doing, in homework or my coursework, right? So what would you say to somebody who's considering a career as a paralegal? Formal education, yes. Formal education, no. And then also, we've got the certification programs, right? Like your certified paralegal certifications and those programs. So what's your opinion on those 2 topics?
Yep. So, and those are great questions. And they are, I think that they are important, because getting that education is a huge investment. And while the paralegal career is growing and it does pay well, especially as, it is a career that you can still advance through, oftentimes people who get into a paralegal career don't just have $10,000 to spend on a program and not know if they're going to recoup it, or not know if they even like that career.
Yes.
So I think that, for me, I think, the individual has to consider what works best for them. As you mentioned, some people are good learners. They're good students. That appeals to them. They want to be able to write it out step by step and really absorb those details. Other people are very kinesthetic learners. They need someone sitting beside them, showing them, how do you do this? How do you do, so I think you need to, first of all, consider what type of learner you are. And I would personally, and obviously I have no stake in paralegal educational programs, but I would advise against going out and investing in that degree just to have the piece of paper. I would, if before I would advise someone to do that, I would encourage them to intern somewhere, get a part-time job as a receptionist at a at a law firm, see if they like it even. And then if you enjoy that kind of work, that environment, that energy, the job requirements, the personalities that you work with. Then if you enjoy that, then think about, do I want to invest money in an education that maybe would take me further? Because the reality is, while I could sit here and say, oh, on-the-job training is better, and I think it is better, personally, my opinion, you learn so much more, but that doesn't mean that degree piece of paper is not a bar to getting a great job. Because I do think that employers want either experience or they want that piece of paper. And so I think that I would be remiss if I just told aspiring paralegals, you don't need that piece of paper, you don't need a degree, because I just don't think it's that simple.
Yes.
So my first advice would be to put yourself in that environment. And if you can't get a job as a receptionist, or if you have to work and you have to, maybe you're considering a career change, then find somewhere that you could volunteer in that setting. we have pro bono clinics all the time, and you don't have to be an attorney to do that. You can be an usher, greeting the people and taking them back. You're still going to get to interact with attorneys. You're still going to get to hear client problems. So if you're in another career thinking about making that transition, think of a way that you could witness it firsthand.
Yeah.
And I would tell you a little bit on that about motivation. If you can find that, if you can take that step, then you're well on your way to being a paralegal, because in my experience, being a paralegal is about looking for those opportunities, right? Looking for the opportunities in the cases and the whatever. So it takes that level of motivation, that thinking outside the box, not just what's the next thing on my checklist.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Great suggestion. While I took the avenue of formal education, I actually volunteered at the municipal courthouse in Seattle in the probation department, the mental health probation department, actually, and learned a lot about the court system and how proceedings and formal hearings happen behind closed doors, how they happen. And knew that I did not want to work in that area of law at all. I loved volunteering. I loved the mental health counselor that I supported and volunteered with. She was a wonderful, patient, empathetic, calm young lady. Yes. And I definitely learned a lot from her. But great suggestion, on applying for a job or just volunteering. And volunteering, you don't need to go spend 40 hours, right? Right. In an office, in a law office, or any type of legal environment to know if you're going to like it or not.
That's right. That's right.
So what about the certification programs that are out there? I'm staring a lot of student loan debt in the face and have for quite some time. And my financial advisor isn't very happy about it. And, I've often questioned, if I did in fact make the right choice of getting, that degree, getting that formal education, or, maybe I should have just, gone through the certified paralegal certification and had that. So what's your opinion, if any, on those certification programs?
Sure. So the way that I feel about the certification programs is, I think that, again, first of all, I think there's fantastic information for having gone through that. I think that it provides an amazing foundation that if you do it, you won't regret it, because it does, you do have to learn a baseline of material to be able to successfully earn those initials behind your name. The thing that I would say is again, to know the market that you're in and know what your ultimate aspirations are. I will say that in South Carolina, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of certified paralegals compared to other parts of the country.
Sure.
And so to spend time, because time is definitely at a premium, and if you're already working in a paralegal position, then you're probably already working hours outside of a regular workday. So to put in the time to study and really prepare for those exams, it takes a lot of dedication. And so if I were doing that analysis, I would think, okay, do I need it for the foundation? Well, maybe 20 years in, I don't, or 10 years in, I don't. But if I'm brand new and I'm looking for that step up, or I want to make myself more attractive than the next candidate, then maybe that's a way to do it. But I really think, what is the position that you're trying to get? My experience generally in South Carolina is that the defense firms are more eager for those credentials than the plaintiffs' firms. The plaintiffs' firms want to train you the way that they want to train you. They all have a little bit different take on how to work up the cases. And the defense firms need a strong baseline of knowledge coming in.
Yes.
And they need you to know every term that there is. They need you to, they rely on you to know not the statutes the way that an attorney would, but to know what's the difference between a wrongful death statute and a personal injury case. I mean, knowing that distinction, recognizing that distinction. What's the difference between beneficiaries for a will or someone who dies intestate?
Yes.
And so I think that, you really want to look at, and then a state like California, you've got to know California law.
Yes.
There's no way, and it's different than some other parts of the country. And so,
each jurisdiction is different as well. So California has many different jurisdictions.
Yes.
So relative to the jurisdiction that you're going to be working in, not necessarily where you live, but whatever jurisdictions that firm is working in or has cases in and represents clients in, you've got to know those statutes and rules of civil procedure, in those different jurisdictions, if they are in fact different. Some are, some aren't.
You're right. And that is one thing actually that fascinated me about what you do, is because I have a case right now that I am helping a firm with where one of the defense paralegals is based in Georgia, but it's a South Carolina case. And so if she had a resource like yours that was in South Carolina that she could reach out to, and she doesn't need to know everything about South Carolina law. Right. She needs some nuts and bolts because she's a really strong paralegal in Georgia.
Yes. Yes.
And so I just think that, that was something that intrigued me about what you do, really, is like, how do we make this super accessible so that, so that you're not having to spend a lot of money on it? Going back just to the CP programs and the registered paralegals and the PPS and all of those different, I think that's the other important thing, is to kind of look at the organization that you might want to be aligned with, because they are slightly different.
Yes.
That might be based on geographically where you are and which one is the most active and going to give you the most networking opportunities. But it might also be, the level of paralegal that you aspire to be, because there are different, NOWS is a great organization and they have all different levels. They're legal support professionals. So it's everything from, truly the receptionist, the legal secretary, all the way up to e-discovery folks, have opportunities there, where some of the others are geared more stringently toward paralegals. And so law firm administrators, there are other groups out there. So, and then the other thing that I would say is, if maybe you're not ready to commit to an actual certification program, what about programs that are offered kind of low cost, but that are continuing education in your field? See if you like that. See if it's beneficial. See if you get really like actionable stuff that you can take back and use at your office. Try to pick out ones that are going to, I run one here in South Carolina, and we make sure that we give certificates of completion so that they put that in their little accolades folder, so that at the end of the year they can say, we did this, we did this. The other thing that we do is we send, with the attendee's permission, we send an email to their boss, whoever they designate, that says, hey, Susie hung out with us all day on Saturday and did continuing education, and here's what we worked on, and she's amazing, and I just wanted you to know that she took her own time on a Saturday to come out and get continuing. And so that's something that is not as big of a commitment as the certification program, but still can advance your career.
Yes. That's such a great point. Let's touch a little on, you were talking about, the education that you can get, and, kind of like finding their niche in the legal field, right?
Yep.
There, you mentioned firm administration, which is something that I have pursued and am pursuing, based on my legal experience, based on being in the office and doing the job. As a manager, as a firm administrator, I know what it takes to do the work, because I've done it, right? Yep. And so there's litigation specialists, right? You can be like this amazing, like litigation paralegal. medical chronologies. You can be an amazing medical records paralegal. Like I did not, that didn't entertain me. Medical records and chronologies. And, you know, I was always like, don't we have a company that we can outsource this who's really great at doing these? Because like after, I don't know, 30 minutes, I'm ready to be done, right? So what's your opinion about that? You know, people that don't know, they think paralegal, oh, they're just there supporting a lawyer. You know, they're ones doing all the work. They're just busting out pleadings all day long, generating pleadings. But elaborate on that a little bit, like the different areas that a paralegal can get into or can really, you know, do some research on. And, you know, hey, maybe in my area there isn't really like a medical chronology specialist paralegal, and I love that kind of stuff. So let me really polish those skills and really highlight myself and promote myself as, you know, kind of from on an independent perspective, because I'm big on entrepreneurs. I'm very big on, we are the ones doing the work. And so without us, like the firm cannot move on. The firm cannot work. So, you know, if you're looking for, you know, to be your own boss or to start your own business, talk about that a little bit in your opinion, how somebody who, you know, can maybe find this niche, or, you know, what could potentially be available to them along those lines. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I love it, because I do get a lot of, you know, I do a lot of mentoring of younger paralegals, and that is, or just newer paralegals. They don't have to be younger, they're just newer. And so that is what they always want to know. Well, how do I get to the, you know, how do I, and my best advice to them is exactly what you just said. And that is, look, everyone in that field is going to be learning paralegal skills. You've got to learn something, number one, that is going to be fulfilling to you. Because if it's not fulfilling to you, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
Right.
And
like those medical chronologies, I would not.
That's right. You wouldn't. You wouldn't do that for 20 years. You wouldn't do medical chronology for 20 years. And so, which then means you're not going to develop that super strong reputation. You're not going to develop, you know, people aren't going to see that continuity in the field. So first of all, you got to find something that is fulfilling to you, that you enjoy, so that it's sustainable. And secondly, you've got to find something that's going to set you apart. Because again, if you want to change jobs, you know, you're unhappy where you are, you want to make more money, your husband gets transferred, you have to move, whatever that reason, you've got to have something that's going to set you apart from the other paralegals. And it could be, you know, you named some great ones. Others could be even simpler. One thing that, there's a girl that I worked with years ago. She was fantastic at, couldn't answer discovery, terrible at answering discovery, but she could create some fillable forms. Well, think of all of the efficiencies that she created in that office by being a guru on these fillable forms. And guess what? The attorneys didn't want to lose her. So they accepted that her weakness was discovery and looked to her for, hey, we need a form made on this. Hey, can you take this form and make it easier for us? And so I always, you know, leverage what you love to do, leverage your strengths, be the best darn automatic field form filler that you can be, whatever that is. But it might not be that. It might be, you know, maybe Excel. Excel is something that is multifaceted, multifunctional. And if you can really master Excel, the formulas, the one amazing thing, and I know you don't like medical bills, medical chronologies, I do. So what I would tell you is a way to wow people is on that Excel spreadsheet, use like the count function and show the number of doctor visits, whether it's really high or whether it's really low. But that's something that, you know, you don't have to sit there and like count lines. There's like a function that does it. And so,
but that's important when you're evaluating a medical chronology.
It is.
How many times did this person go to chiropractor? How many times did this person go to massage therapy? How many times did this person go to physical therapy?
Right.
That's how a case is evaluated, for sure.
So just finding a niche like that. And then the other thing that I encourage people to think about is, what do they love about, people all the time come to me, I'm just not happy in my job. Okay, what part of your job do you love? There's got to be something that they ask you to do that you love to do. What is it? And then figure out, how do I get to do more of that? And maybe it is a transition. Maybe it's going from litigation, which is very multitasking, all, to real estate, where you've got a packet and you're responsible for everything. And, it's very form-based. You're responsible, and you still get to do the research. There still is research to do. There still is responsibility. Real estate paralegals in South Carolina make great money.
Yes.
But it's not that frenzied chaos that litigation is. It's different.
Right.
Or family law. People either love or hate working in family law.
Oh my gosh.
If someone tells me that they enjoy talking to the clients, then I might ask them, have you thought about family law? Because that's a lot, your clients want to talk to you in family law. So really just thinking about, what is your niche? Find one. If you don't have one, find one, and try to know everything that you can about it. And I did that. It's funny that you bring up medical records, and you probably don't know this about my history, but that is how we talked a minute ago about NALA. And so I went to a NALA convention a few years into being a paralegal. Okay. And I wanted to do, they announced, I went to a member exchange presentation, which was like the highest honor for a member to do, right? You got to present to your fellow attendees. So I thought, next year, that is what I want to do. I want to be invited to present. And so my submission that I asked them to consider was on medical records. And so I did that and just learned everything that, I already knew a lot about them, but really just kind of from that became my niche. Everybody knew, oh, she's great with medical records. She's great with medical records. Yeah. And you just fortunately, I liked medical records, so I was okay with that. But it is funny how you become that go-to person. Right. It's great job security, confidence booster, which are things that can be lacking in our field. Oh,
sure.
I mean,
oh, sure.
It is some of the most confident people that I know question their own confidence in, really stressful situations at work. So
yes, especially in the legal field. For those of you watching, you've really got to have tough skin in whatever area of law you work in. Every area of law has deadlines. There are deadlines that, can be negotiated on both sides. There are some deadlines that cannot be negotiated. Mm-hmm. There are some deadlines that you can negotiate, but if the other side isn't willing to stipulate to it, you can't negotiate mm-hmm. the deadline.
That's right.
And deadlines get missed. I think every good paralegal has missed a vital deadline in their career. You mentioned NALA. Mm-hmm. And talked about, how that organization, really introduced you to something that you really didn't know anything about until they introduced it to you, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say to the new paralegal about these organizations, about NALA, not anyone in particular. They are all their own individual platform, here mm-hmm. to support the legal support professional, offer great member benefits. So would you guide and direct new paralegals to these associations, and why or why not?
So I would definitely, I would guide and direct new paralegals to anything that is going to create community and network opportunities and additional resources for them. And I think one of the great things about any of those associations really are that, first of all, you can be a member of more than one, and many of them they are organized where they have a national and then maybe even a state and then a local, or maybe just the national and the local affiliates. But so it's not like you just join this national group and you never see anyone and you just log on to the computer. So the benefits, to me, the biggest benefits are the resources and the networking that comes from it. And that if I don't know how to do something, I might have 20 paralegals in my city that I could have developed those relationships with. Now, that's only as good as if you actually develop the relationships.
Right.
So and this last year was a crazy year. You couldn't attend the same in-person events and all of that, but there are virtual events, and there are emails that go out and things like that. And now we're slowly getting back into the in-person events, but I think they're great for that. I think they're also great because they do have great programming. I mean, I've looked at all of the national associations, and absolutely, they all have their shortcomings too, right?
Sure.
So if you've heard drama about one or the other one, I mean, that's any organization. It's any organization.
All of them.
They are. But what you really have to focus on is what are the resources that they have out there. And they do have good educational resources. Some of them have things like insurance programs. So if you don't have your own health insurance, they have affiliated companies. They have partnerships with Office Depot and Hertz Rent-A-Car, and all of those that if you just go look on their websites and check them out, or maybe someone that's in one of them, ask about that. But I think that they're low cost, high yield resources.
Yes,
They also have, I can't believe I almost forgot this part. Then if you want to grow your career, if you want to advance, great opportunities to not just present like that, but write articles for their professional journals. They all have professional journals. And they are always clamoring for authors. Right. So if you're listening to this and you want to be a published author, I mean, that's one of your goals. Reach out to those associations because they want authors on topics.
Yeah, absolutely. I created a webinar about workplace bullying. And it was this great PowerPoint presentation, and I was just so proud of it. And I was like, okay, well, who needs to hear this? The legal support professional really needs to hear this. So NALA was having their annual conference, and they were looking for speakers for their conference. And so I sent them my presentation, and fortunately they had already booked all of their conference speakers for that particular year, but they did invite me to present on their webinar platform.
Yep.
So my webinar, it's now an ethics CLE here in Nevada, approved by the CLE board here in Nevada. But my first pitch and my first launch and opportunity, to do that was with NALA, and my webinar is still there today.
Yes.
Still sharing it, on their platform today. So great suggestion with that. Great suggestion. That really allows, the not so traditional paralegal, right, to talk about being a paralegal and talk about their career as a paralegal. And again, going back to my question, what can a paralegal do? What areas can a paralegal work in? The opportunities are endless. Really are endless. So one thing that I want paralegals to really understand, and in closing, let's chat about this a little bit. So there's pre-litigation cases, and then there's litigation cases, right? Two very different days for paralegals, very different workload for paralegals. And you being a litigation, expert, I'm calling you that, whether you, I don't know if you call yourself that or not, but being a litigation expert, working in litigation, training on litigation, explain that to a new paralegal that wouldn't honestly understand it. Pre-litigation work, and then litigation work, and maybe the three most important, I guess, skills in each of those platforms, in your opinion.
Okay. All right. So
I'm giving you homework.
You are. It's like a pop quiz. That's what this is. So I do definitely appreciate the distinction between the two, because you're absolutely right. And if you're in a space where you're trying to lump them together, then you're going to be frustrated and you're not going to be successful. So I definitely appreciate you making that distinction between the two. So litigation paralegals work on trial cases. Your goal is you're getting the case ready for trial. You might be a week away from trial, you might be a year away from trial, but that case is going to trial, and everything that you do is being done in preparation for trial. So you may work
away, right? Which is a year away.
yes, which is a year away. But what it means is that every email that's written in that case, every conversation with an expert could potentially come back into the case. And so, the first thing that I would say is that you have to be very careful in litigation cases about understanding who you're communicating with, and whether or not, the first thing would be whether or not it is discoverable, is what we call it. And that means if I write Ms. Camay an email, can the other side, can the opposing side have access to my email to her? And if yes, I can still email you, but I want to be very careful about what I say in that email.
Right.
I mean, I can still email you, but I've just got to be very careful in it.
Ms. Camay, please call me ASAP.
Yes, you see those. You see those in the files, right?
Not, hey, Ms. Camay, so we've discovered this in the case, and it's really going to make a difference for us at trial. Yeah, you don't want to put that in. That's right.
That does not go in the email. No. So that would be one thing that I would say that is very important to understand if you're working in litigation files. The other thing that I would say in litigation files is you must be organized, and you must have an organizational system that not only you understand, but that the rest of your team understands.
Good.
Because there could be an emergency that comes up where you're not the one working on the case.
Yes.
Or more importantly for me, as you've been in the field a while, you think, no. I'm not worried about, I'm not going to be there for trial. What I want is I want everyone to understand my organizational system so that at that 11th hour, they can all come in and help me. I'm going to pull the whole team in. I'm going to pull in the paralegals that I would do the same thing for. When they're getting ready for trial, I would help them. And so, but I want them to be able to come in and read my system so that they can help, and I'm not having to spend time explaining my organizational system.
So we are not, this is not a competitive industry. This is not a competitive position. And not to interrupt your train of thought, but to expand on that point. When you become a paralegal and you go into a law office, and there are other paralegals that don't want to tell you what they know, that don't want to help you, that don't want to explain or show you what they're doing, you might rethink about where you're working. Because the success of the case, the success of you as a team, and this, especially in litigation, there's enough room at the top for everybody. And another support professional withholding information or withholding a process or withholding tools and resources that are going to help the case, because it's about the case. This isn't about my coworker and myself. This is about the case and the client. We have to work collectively together, and we have to be transparent and work as a team. Absolutely. Great point.
Yeah. So I would say, know what's discoverable, that case strategy, know have an intentional organization system. And then the third that I would say in the litigation files especially is keeping clear communication, clear and consistent communication. And that is with all the players. That's with your attorney. It's also with the client. If you're in a litigation file, 30 days should not go by when you have not spoken to your client. And it can be a simple check-in. Hey, just want you to know we're still working on the case, because it's one case of many on your desk, but for your client, this is their life. It doesn't matter which side you're on. It doesn't, if you're representing the plaintiff, it really is. But if you're on the defense side, I mean, maybe that guy who had a kid drown in his swimming pool never had that happen before. He's got that hanging over him, and he needs to know that somebody is working on it. and that you are still working on it. So doesn't matter which side you're on. I think that 30 days should be the standard in terms of keeping communication with your client. And guess what? They might tell you something else. I mean, I had a client that was like, you know, the whole claim was about like arm injuries, right? And future surgeries and limitations with his hand. He had a very bad car wreck or motorcycle wreck that caused a very bad arm injury, his whole. And so guess what? I called him. I talked to him about something. We had a conversation. He called me back 2 minutes later and said, you know, I think I probably should have told you that I got in a fight with my girlfriend over the weekend and I went outside and punched a tree and I broke my hand. And I was like, which hand did you break?
Well, the one he injured, of course.
Of course. Of course. But if I did not have that open, consistent communication with him, instead of me,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
You're right. It could have potentially been devastating to the case.
Yeah.
Because I might not have known it.
Yeah. Yes. It could have come out in trial when you had no knowledge of it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Such a good point.
Just keeping that in mind. So those would be my tips for the litigation side, and the same with your attorney, because you want to make sure that you're working on, that you're prioritizing the things that he wants you to be prioritizing. Yes, so same with the clear, consistent communication with your attorney. And then on the pre-lit files, you know, offices handle those differently. Sometimes pre-lit files then convert to litigation files.
Right.
But then other offices really only handle the pre-litigation, and then they farm out those cases to other firms when they get to a litigation stage. So I think it does depend on how your specific firm operates or handles those. But what I would say in the pre-lit files, your job is to investigate those cases, to then identify like what are, and I guess it depends on how detailed your office gets, because sometimes on the pre-lit files, it's like a churn and burn. Like we want to figure out the injuries, figure out the liability. We want to write a 3-paragraph demand letter.
Get them out of here. Yeah.
Get it out the door. So, but I do think that there is a certain base level of investigation that has to go. Your job is to know those details, the date of the wreck or injury or whatever happened, the players, right? You need to know who's the plaintiff, who's the defendant. You don't have to know where the plaintiff went to middle school, okay? If you're in a litigation file, you need to know where they went to middle school and what kind of car they drove in high school and who their first girlfriend was. I mean, litigation, like you really got to know. Right. But the pre-lit files, you don't. You need to know what their injuries were, how it impacted their life, who their medical providers were, and you know what else you want to know? What are their expectations for the case?
Oh, that's so good. So good.
So, and I think, again, the other side, you know, if you're on the defense side, you want to know what is that claims adjuster's expectation for where this case is going to end up? Yeah. And are you guys on that same page? You know, is that, so I think when you're working those pre-lit files, it's much more about time management. And I don't say that term lightly, because I know time management is like a way overused term, but I really do mean in the pre-lit files, it is, where is your time best spent on those cases? And what is your attorney's expectation? Is your attorney's expectation that you're going to get out 4 demand letters every week? Or is your attorney's expectation, you know, just understanding what that is so that you can budget your time and allocate it in the right place.
Yes.
I think another in the pre-lit is being tactful, because again, we talked about how, you know, I like the client communication in the litigation files. In the pre-lit files, I do not have the luxury of talking to Susie for 45 minutes. I just don't. But being able to convey that to her without Susie thinking that means her case is not important to me, right? You've got to figure out how to do that in the pre-lit. So I think pre-lit is a great place to start and really hone some of those skills. You get to see maybe lower value cases and how they work and what the pitfalls are, and just always be looking for that. I would say that to any paralegal. Always be looking for, because you mentioned it earlier, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
We all mess up. And so it's recognizing that, owning it, and then trying to put something in place so that you don't do it the next time.
Sure. Well, and understanding, yes, mistakes are made, but how we can correct it, right? And how it can be corrected as soon as possible,
Yes. Be open with your attorney about it. I mean, I learned that early in my career. Unfortunately, I did not learn it in a bad way, but learning that the best thing that I could do is, you know what, I made this mistake, but here are 3 possible solutions. What can we do next? What should I do next? And going to them, and because there's nothing wrong with making a mistake.
Of course. And it builds trust. When you make a mistake and you go to, the supervising attorney on the case, sometimes in larger firms and defense firms, there's many attorneys.
Yes.
So the supervising attorney or the lead attorney on the case going to them immediately and saying, hey, I made this mistake. That is going to build trust with them. They are going to know that if you make a mistake, that you're not going to sit on it for a day or 2 or a week before you come to them. That you're going to come to them immediately, and the 2 of you together can figure out, how to correct the mistake. The one thing that I want to close with, and just as we were talking about pre-lit cases and litigation cases, as a paralegal, you have to decide where you want to be. You have to understand the nuances of litigation cases and the nuances of pre-litigation cases, and where you would fit best. We want to walk in our greatness. We want to be great at what we do. We want to strive for excellence, not perfection, but excellence. And the areas, every area of law is very different, and pre-lit and litigation cases, both sides are very different, as well as plaintiff and defense are very different. So as you embark on your journey as a paralegal, please feel free to reach out to Miss Amy. Amy, please tell everybody where they can find you at, and possibly mentor and coach with you across social media platforms.
Thank you. So my email address, my website is www.theanglellc.com, and it's ANGLE, not angel, ANGEL. I mean, that might fit also, but it's theanglellc.com. And my email is Amy, AMY, at theanglellc.com. I do also have an Instagram, but I'm not really on it that much, so don't reach out to me there. But if you email me, I always email back, and I am more than happy to connect with people, to give them tips, I'm in a great place now where I get to be in these firms and I get to help train up their paralegals. And a lot of that is by modeling, by example to them. Here's how you build a case from the ground up. You can do this. And really leverage those strengths like we talked about. But I think you made great points about they do need to fit, where is your best fit? Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you're happy where you are.
Correct.
That you're.
Correct. I agree with you. Thanks so much, Amy, for joining me today. Thank you so much for this premiere. I could not have picked a better, more talented, skilled paralegal to speak on my platform today. Amy, you're also on LinkedIn as well.
I am on LinkedIn.
Yes. I so appreciate you joining me. For those of you watching, click the subscribe button here on YouTube and never miss another interview of mine again. This is Miss Camay, your host on the Miss Camay Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.